Hello everyone, my name is Rafael and I'm an account manager here at 7shifts. Today I'm going to be going over the 7punches product, how to enable it, and how to get it started for your employees to be able to punch in and punch out. So first things first, what you're going to do is you're going to hover over the top right icon here and you're going to go down into your company settings. So from there, you're then going to go into this add-ons tab here, and then over into time clocking 7punches. So you're going to enable this. Once you do, you're going to have a few settings here to get going. First things first, you have your grace period. So this is minutes before or after a shift starts that an employee can clock in, and minutes before or after a shift starts that an employee can clock out. If the employee falls within these bounds, then the punch will automatically be approved. So let's say for this example, I'm going to do a 10-minute grace period. So from here, we have a few rounding rules as well. So rounding for early clock in, late clock in, and rounding for clock out. And then we have a setting here that prevents early clock ins. So if I enable this, employees, they will not be able to clock in unless it's within the 10-minute grace period of their shift. If this is disabled, then they can simply punch in whenever they'd like, and it would be highlighted as a early clock in. From there, we have the auto punch out rule. So this is for the system to automatically punch out an employee, so that way it doesn't overflow into the next day. So let's say, for example, I punch in at 2 p.m. and my shift ends at 8 p.m. However, I forget to punch out at 8 p.m. What's then going to happen is at 12 a.m. midnight, it's automatically going to punch me out, so that way it doesn't overflow into the next day. And when I try to punch in, it just punches me out. Next up, we have a setting that allows punch without a shift. So if enabled, employees can clock in when they do not have a shift that day. Allow breaks. So this is where it gets a little more customizable. So if enabled, employees will be able to clock in and out for breaks. So if I turn this on, I have three different types of breaks here. I have paid breaks, unpaid breaks, and multiple. So of course, if they're paid breaks, this is just for recording purposes. They'll punch in, they'll punch out. You'll be able to see when their breaks were. However, they're going to get paid for the duration of their entire shift. If it's an unpaid break, then the amount of time that they take on their break will not be calculated into their payroll and their actual labor cost. And then lastly is the multiple break option here. So as you can see, I have some predetermined breaks here. So I'm just going to delete a couple of these and create one from scratch here. So I'm going to add a break, and my first break will be a unpaid 15-minute coffee break. And this is going to be a 15-minute break, and the shift length is going to be 3 hours. So what that means is if I have a shift that is a minimum of 3 hours, I'm going to be offered this unpaid 15-minute coffee break. And then lastly, we have this enforced section. So if this is enabled, the employee, if they do not punch in and punch out for their break, then that punch is automatically going to be unapproved, and a manager is going to need to review that punch before it's able to get approved. If it is not enforced, then if they don't take their break, it's okay. It will still get automatically approved as long as it's within the bounds of the shift and the grace period. So now I'm going to hit save here, and now I'm going to add a paid break. So perhaps this one is going to be my lunch break. Break length will be 30 minutes, and the shift length needs to be a minimum of, let's say, 5 hours. So again, when I take if I have a shift that's over 5 hours, I'm going to have the option to take a 30-minute paid break. And again, whether I'd like to enforce it or not, that's completely up to you. So now I have two break options here. I got my coffee break and I got my lunch break. And later on when we get into the terminal, you'll see kind of where that comes into play and what that looks like for the employee side. We have another setting here, employee timesheet access. So if this is enabled, employees will have the ability to view their own timesheets. That's kind of nice to know as an employee, just to kind of see when you've been punching in and when you've been punching out. Allows them to kind of help predict what their pay is going to be for that pay period. And then lastly is declare tips. So if enabled, employees will have the ability to declare their tips upon clock out. So if they made $35 in tips that day, as they punch out, it's going to ask them for that number. You can pop that number in and you can keep that all recorded. So at this point, I have my 7punches settings mostly done. There's going to be one more step here. So now that I hit save, what you'll notice is on the top, you're going to have this new little clock icon, and that clock icon highlights the 7punches tool. So when I click there, I have one more thing I gotta do, or a couple more things. So first things is last pay period end date. So whenever your last pay period ended before, so that you can start a new one using this. So let's say perhaps Sunday the 3rd is when my last pay period ended. From here, I can choose whether it's a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or semi-monthly payroll frequency. And I'll select bi-weekly here. And then I have this auto-assign punch IDs option. So if I auto-assign this, it's going to email all of my employees their punch IDs. If I keep this unchecked, I can simply go and assign their punch IDs right from their employee profile. So I'm gonna hit continue here. So now that I hit continue, I've played around in this account in the past, so I have a few kind of pay periods in here already, but this is what it's going to look like. So one thing I want to quickly touch on before getting into the terminal is if I go into this employee section here and I find this employee, this is where you're going to have their punch ID. It's going to be under the HR and payroll section, right under their punch ID. All right, so I'm going to hop into the schedule here. I'm just going to quickly make sure that I have a shift scheduled for myself today. Looks like I got one here in the front of house. I'm going to publish this. So I have a shift from 2:45 p.m. to 10 p.m. As you can tell, that's a shift that's going to be longer than 5 hours, which is the maximum number of hours where I can reach both of my breaks. And now if I click onto this little punch icon here, this is where I can access the terminal. So right under this terminals tab. So one thing I want to highlight before getting into the terminal is I highly recommend downloading the 7punches app on the Apple Store or the 7punches app on the Google Play Store. The reason that is because it's UI is a lot nicer there. You can download it onto an iPad or a tablet, perhaps even an old mobile phone, and all of your employees can punch in and out through there, as opposed to having to punch in and out through a computer. But if for whatever reason you don't have access to one of these devices, you can access the terminal through the computer. So again, to do that, you go into this little clock icon here, you click under terminal, and then you click the location that you want to access this terminal for. So in this case, it's going to be the Sunnyvale Grill. It's going to let me know that it's going to log me out for security purposes, because right now I'm logged in as an admin. So once I hit there, I hit yes, it's now going to log me out. And this is where I can go in and put in my punch ID. So from here, my name is Rafael. Like I said, I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna punch in for the day. So I'm gonna do 1397 here, hit punch. Now from there, it says, hey Rafael, you successfully punched in. So now that I've punched in, let's say I worked a couple hours and now I'm looking to take my coffee break. I'm gonna come back to the terminal. I'm gonna hit my punch ID here. And then going to select a break. And now I'm going to pick my coffee break. So now that I pick my coffee break, it's going to start the timer here for 15 minutes. And I got to make sure that I come back within 15 minutes after my break. So one thing you'll notice is if I tried to punch back in here right away, it's actually not going to let me. It's going to let me know to come back in another 14 minutes once my break is complete. So at this stage, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to log back into the 7shifts platform. And I'm going to show you what some of the reports look like here. All right, so now if I go to this clock icon over here, I'm going to go into the pay period of May 26th to June 1st. This is where I'm going to have my punch. So right now, because I'm technically still punched in and I'm working, if I come in here, we'll see that I punched in at 2:44. I'm currently on break, so it doesn't show the amount of my break. And it also doesn't show a punch out time. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hop into a pay period where I have a little more data where you can see what it would look like much more realistically here. So December 9th to December 22nd, I'm going to have a list of a bunch of breaks here. So we can see Jessica, Monday through Friday, she's punched in 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. She took a 15-minute paid break there. And let's say, for example, she came in here at 10:30 a.m. and she came in late. But Jessica came to me and told me that she actually punched in at 10 a.m. She came in at 10 a.m. She just forgot to punch in until 10:30. And I have, the records to prove it. Maybe some other employees backed her up. I can go over here into this modify section and I can modify this punch. So perhaps she claimed she punched in at 10 a.m., not 10:30. I hit 10 a.m. here now. I can put in some additional notes there, and now I can hit save. So now this punch is modified. It reflects what actually happened, or perhaps what needed to be changed. And we can see that all these punches are approved. So if an employee punches in outside of those grace periods, or they automatically get punched out by the system, what they're gonna do is they're gonna show up in this punches awaiting approval section, where you'll need to go and approve those punches. And then once all of your punches are approved, you can close your timesheet. So once the timesheet is closed, this is where you're going to have the ability to now run the payroll report. So to run the payroll report, where you go is into the report section up here on the top right. You're then going to go into the worked hours and wages summary. You're going to select a date range here. I know that I have some data in the past, back in December of 2017, from the 11th to the 17th here. I'm going to pick my Sunnyvale Grill location, and I'm going to take it on a web view. So now once I hit submit, it's going to look like this here. I'll see Jessica, all the different days she's worked, the times she's worked, the breaks she's had, what her hourly wage is here, the amount of hours that she's worked, and then here the amount of pay that she receives. So we can see the grand total of hours, whether there's any overtime or holiday hours are included. Same thing with pay, any overtime pay or holiday pay there. So once you're done, you're able to scroll down to the bottom. You'll see a list of all of your employees, their punches, their hours that they worked, wages and pay. And then from here, you'll also be able to see your grand total along the bottom. So like I said, this is the web view. You can certainly also download it from a Excel doc as well. And you can hit download and then be able to have that information through there. So that concludes the 7punches webinar. Please, if you have any questions at all about that, don't hesitate to contact our 7shift support team. You can email them at support@7shifts.com, or you can give us a call at 1-888-979-5877. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you learned something.